ones and sadly never returned. 160 some odd Union soldiers that died of exposure in a makeshift prison near Charleston, South Carolina. These men moved the dead POWs from a mass grave to individual graves. On May 1st, 1865, a 10th became official in 1967. 188 Americans lie in the hill behind you. Not far from here, U.S. Navy boatswain's mate and MS Shannon and the USS Chesapeake are buried side by side at the Naval Cemetery in Stadacona from the War of 1812. Every year, the U.S. Consulate is given information concerning American veterans. We thank you all for joining us today to honor the heritage and sacrifice of our fallen. On the purpose and gathering that we have here today.
Guidance for the leaders of our countries, for President Obama, for Prime Minister Harper. Your Honor, Your Worship, distinguished guests, Laboon, Halifax, costume warriors, it is indeed an honor for me to be here today to celebrate your Memorial Day and to recognize its importance. 1812 was a significant battle between our two countries. But out of the ashes of that battle rose two great nations. They stand here before us today. The United States of America and Canada. The two nations that have the strongest friendship and the longest undefended border of any two countries in the world. Yesterday, I had the honor to attend a memorial service at our downtown facility at the Cenotaph, which was run and organized by young students from grades 7 to 12. Canadians all standing there, recognizing those who had gone before us. I think we can stand proud, realizing that we stand on the shoulders of those who have gone before us, and they will stand on our shoulders. That's what this is all about. It's about honor. There is no glory in death, but there is honor in remembrance. Thank you very much.
Admiral Garden, men and women in uniform, distinguished guests, it's truly a great honor for me to be here today to represent the United States and the United States Coast Guard as we gather to recognize the bicentennial of the War of 1812 and honor the sacrifices of those who served their nations in the last conflict that actually pitted us against one another. This Monday marks the observance of Memorial Day in the United States, and much like Canada's Remembrance Day, it is time set aside to remember the lives and losses of our fathers and mothers, husbands and wives, sons and daughters, close friends, and fellow warriors. Died while in captivity a short distance from here in Melville Island Prison. It's appropriate because we are living proof of their enduring legacies, their sacrifices, and their losses, which are not in vain. For without the efforts of those who fought and died so long ago, we wouldn't find ourselves. I'm reminded of the fact that the War of 1812 prompted several legacies to the Revenue Cutter Service, which later became today's United States Coast Guard. Just as the Coast Guard's roles in Homeland Security drastically increased as a result of the terrorist attacks of September 11th, so did our roles in national defense operations increase as a result of the War of 1812. It was a difficult and dangerous war for all, but one that firmly established the notion that protection of the coast and coastal efforts to manage risks and accelerate legitimate flows of people and commerce across our shared border. As President Kennedy said in his 1961 address to Canadian made us partners, and necessity has made us allies. Those whom nature has so joined together, let no man put asunder. What unites us is far greater than what divides us." End quote. And that has never been more true than it is today. The collaborative spirit enjoyed by our nations are vital to the building the seamless binational enterprise of safety, security, and that the objectives of the Beyond the Border Declaration can be met. Let us not forget the sacrifices of not only those interred here on Deadman's Island, but also those who fought on both sides of the War of 1812. Those sacrifices helped shape the bonds we share today. Together, we can continue to strengthen those partnerships that enable our shared border to serve as a conduit to prosperity for both our countries for generations to come. Semper Paratus, Godspeed. Thank you.
Ms. Susan Crystal, representing Ambassador David Jacobson.
David Jacobson. It's interesting to note that the U.S. diplomatic presence in Canada had its start during the War of 1812. At that time, the U.S. government had assigned a diplomatic agent to oversee the U.S. prisoners of war at Melville Island, and later we established a permanent post here in Halifax, the oldest diplomatic post in what is now Canada. Indeed, even in this bitter conflict, the seeds of friendship were planted. Memorial Day for me is a very special part of the United States. Growing up, my family, like many across the United States, regularly attended the Memorial Day Parade. Lining the boulevard, we would see the marching bands, see the Boys and Girl Scouts and Campfire Girls, and of course the veterans, resplendent in their uniforms, marching proudly. We would attend the ceremony, listening at the cemetery, listening to the stirring words of Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. And today, as we stand here on Deadman's Island, we recognize that it is never too late to honor the valiant efforts of the fallen. When we look through the diaries and the letters of the men who were imprisoned here, they tell of difficult times and cold weather, and probably some rainy weather too. But they also tell of decent treatment and thankfulness of being here in Halifax as opposed to.
Now will you please welcome Mrs. Ginger Apier from the Daughters of the War of 1812.
Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for the National Society, United States Daughters of 1812 to be here today, celebrating our Memorial Day, or Decoration Day, as it was called over 100 years ago. To be able to acknowledge the sacrifices of those that did not return to their homeland during the War of 1812. The National Society United States Daughters of 1812 started a discussion over 6 years ago with an idea to honor those War of 1812 veterans that died on foreign soil and are buried on Deadman's Island. These veterans gave their all for their country. One of lives. These veterans of the War of 1812, buried on Deadman's Island, exemplify our mission. It is especially fitting that during the bicentennial of the War of 1812 that they are not forgotten. By the powers invested in me as President National of the United States Daughters of 1812, I now present to the Canadian people, and this is our marker at the entrance to Deadman's Island. I present this marker to our common heritage and a pledge to perpetuate the bonds of friendship between us and the hope that the peace along our border continues for 200 more years when our bicentennial is over. The National Society, United States Daughters of 1812, thank all of those on both sides of the border that made this event happen for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Apier.
Port arms. Ready, aim, fire! present art.
That recognizes leadership, sacrifice, and dedication. We stand in awe knowing that from the bitterest